So it's essential that be put clearly in context. Now, as I understand it, the defense had invited Raoul to appear here. He's outside this jurisdiction, so a subpoena would be futile. But he was asked to appear here. In earlier proceedings, there were attempts to depose him, and he resisted them. So he has not attempted to come forward at all and tell his side of the story or to defend himself. As we move into the next area, we're concerned now about a broader conspiracy. A broader conspiracy. And that's two-pronged, ladies and gentlemen. On the one hand, the broader conspiracy goes beyond a shooter in the bushes who gets away with killing Martin King. It goes from him through Mr. Jowers, who was involved in facilitating, and it goes back to Mr. Liberto, whom you've heard was clearly a part of it. But it goes beyond Mr. Liberto in terms of the mob side, because you've heard from witness Nathan Whitlock how he used to push a fruit cart in New Orleans with Mr. Carlos Marcello. And that he then has this relationship and this awareness of Marcello and Marcello activities. Carlos Marcello has been the mob kingpin, was the mob leader in this part of the country for a long, long time. So any contract, any mob contract on Martin Luther King's life would come from Marcello through Liberto into the local infrastructure that Marcello had here in Memphis. Marcello himself was involved in gun running. Part of the evidence in terms of the military involvement is contained in a lengthy article that we put into evidence that appeared in March of 1993 in the Commercial Appeal by Steve Tompkins. And that article indicated that there was a high-ranking general who had been charged and imprisoned for aiding and abetting the trading in stolen weapons. That deal meant what he was involved in was the theft of guns from arsenals, armories, and camps like Camp Shelby in Mississippi. The theft of weapons from those places that were trucked to a Marcello property in New Orleans, and from the Marcello property in New Orleans were shipped around the coast into Houston, Texas, where they were taken off. And that is where Raoul and his crowd came into the receipt of those weapons before they went into Latin and South America. So that's one prong of the broader conspiracy, the mob. But you see already there is a relationship between organized crime and the military in the receipt of those weapons and in the ongoing sale of them. And then we move directly into the government of the United States agents themselves. We have learned that the 111th Military Intelligence Group, based at Fort McPherson, Atlanta, Georgia, were here. They were in Memphis. They had Martin King under surveillance. That was open surveillance, eye-to-eye surveillance. They had him under surveillance. Eli Arkin of the Memphis Police Department Intelligence or Inspectional Bureau Intelligence Division said that they were in his office. He's admitted that they were in his office. They were here. There was another section here that was involved in covert surveillance of Martin King. Covert means budget, wiretapping, that type of activity. And that was done at the River Line. When he was here on the 17th or the 18th, you heard a witness say he was one of three people who were effectively a surveillance team. They had Martin King's suite bugged, every room of it bugged, including the balcony. He wanted to speak privately and went out on the balcony. They would pick it up by relay from the roof. That type of covert surveillance carried out by another agency, usually the Army Security Agency. So there we have those two. Those two agencies involved very clearly here. Then there were photographers. Remember those photographers that Captain Wheaton talked about? They were on the roof of the fire station. He put them there. And who were they? They were a psychological operations team. And they were there and they photographed everything throughout that day. That means, ladies and gentlemen, that there is a film of everything that happened, photographs of everything that happened, buried somewhere. We tried long and hard to unearth it, unsuccessful. But it's there, and it's hidden. As it was hidden from this jury, it's hidden from the American people. And maybe the media one day will let you know that it exists, but it's there. They took those photographs. They were what's known as the psychological operations team, and we know who the two members of that team were. So there was this very strong presence now, which is primarily surveillance, it's intelligence gathering, it's visual, and it's audio, and it's going on, and Martin King and his group are the subject of it. But then there's another group that's more sinister. They're not more sinister because of what they did, because they didn't really do anything. But we know they had a presence. And that was a special 8-man sniper unit that was here in Memphis. They were all part of the 20th Special Forces group. They were here, and they were assigned and they were trained for an operation, for a mission in Memphis. You heard testimony by a man who himself was a National Security Council operative, who was very involved in Iran-Contra activities, who had been a long-standing operative, if you will, of the government of the United States, and whose best friend was a member of that sniper team. There was no reason in the world for his best friend, in a moment of whatever, anguish or burden, desire to relieve himself, to talk about this. Talk about this mission that he was on, that he was assigned to in Memphis, which was aborted. But he was assigned to it. With a Q&A approach, you heard documents of working papers that were used to get information from another source who lived south of the border and who fled the country in settlements out of fear, who was also a part of that unit. So they were there, and there are 3 separate sources that confirmed the presence. But they did nothing. It was not necessary for them to do anything. The mission was aborted because the mob contract was successful, killing Martin Luther King and framing James Earl Ray. Remember, one of the things that Roberto also told the defendant, Lloyd Jowers, was that there was a setup man, there was a patsy lined up to take the blame. There was another area of comfort that the defendant would have.